James has been a prosecutor, and he concentrates his practice now in the area of those accused and driving under the influence. He's also very well versed in the difficulties and flaws in breathalyzers and how they're used. You know, what are the things? I know that sometimes they'll say, well, you touched upon it, when they open up their, they have to get their license and registration, and they have multiple activities they have to do. And there's a purpose for that, I guess. I mean, it's...
Yeah, I mean, anytime, the way that they're trained is that, everything they do, everything an operator does, they're trained to observe. So, for instance, someone in production of their license and registration, they're looking for manual dexterity, because someone who's under the influence of alcohol, the manual dexterity, the fine motor skills is one of the first things to leave someone if they're impaired. So they're looking for how you produce that, whether or not you fumble, drop the item, produce the correct item, the registration. I don't know whose glove box they're looking at, but, like mine, you have a bunch of papers that you need to sift through and hand it to them, But your sifting through those documents will be called fumbling, or, some term designed to elicit, I guess, in your mind's eye, someone who's impaired. But these are all words that they're trained to look for, and I suppose it is fumbling. We would call it perhaps sifting. But once they observe those clues, like I said, you're going to come out of the vehicle and asked to perform a series of field sobriety tests. There are a lot of standardized tests, but there are some non-standardized tests that people just naturally not going to perform well on, just because they're unusual tasks. For instance, walking heel to toe in a straight line. Nobody does that on an everyday basis. So stand on one leg for 30 seconds. Well, there's a lot of people, they come up with studies over the years that say that if such and such a test, for instance, the one-legged stand, 65% of the suspects, if you give it correctly and look for the certain clues, you can correctly classify 65% of the people you give this test to. That's 65%. So as a test in and of itself.
When you say classify, you mean they'll
someone who's impaired.
Impaired, yeah, okay.
So as a test, it gets a D.
Right.
The 9-step walk and turn. And that is go 9 steps, heel to toe, turn around and come back. And I've truncated the instructions. The instructions are actually about 30 seconds to a minute. That's a 68%.
I guess so. Have you run into roadblocks being more increased in Massachusetts?
Yeah, I mean, the state police, particularly during the summer months for obvious reasons, but the state police in conjunction with local police departments will target certain areas that they deem to be high volume OUI areas or high traffic incident areas that they think qualify, that a lot of people who are drinking,
Cape traffic, or
a lot of people who are drinking and driving.
93, yeah, right.
So they look for choke points. They look for where people would naturally travel, whether it's a high, whether it's Quincy and Quincy Shore Boulevard or up here on the Linway. They put them in places where people naturally are going to go through. And like Mark said, I mean, they stop every single vehicle.
Right.
Places they can't get away.
And
they can't, yeah.
In other words, a place with no exit
no
strategy.
Exits or entrances, yeah.
No way to avoid the unwanted intrusion. So
once you're in, it's like a funnel. You can't go anywhere but through it. And you may have had a glass of wine or with your wife or girlfriend or whatever, and you're just coming home, and there's a good chance that they're going to smell an odor of alcohol from you and send you to what's referred to as a pit area or a screening area. And there you get about 10, 15 troopers with cruisers, blue lights, and it can be a difficult environment.